Welcome to Season 2 of Healing the Tigress, a podcast of conversations and stories on Asian American Pacific Islander maternal mental health. We are your hosts, Peggy, a perinatal mental health therapist,
and Jasmine, a clinical pharmacist who is perinatal mental health certified. As Taiwanese American mothers who lived through postpartum depression and anxiety, we felt like we didn't hear about other AAPI mothers struggling with their mental health in new motherhood. But we knew it couldn't just be us.
So we created this podcast because we hope that sharing these stories can start to break the stigma of mental health in our community and help heal the inner tigress in all AAPI parents. Welcome back to Healing the Tigress. Today's guest is super special. I mean, I know all of our guests are super special, but this guest played a pivotal role in Jasmine's own postpartum depression story. And it's kind of full circle. Who would have thought that years later we would be getting to interview this special guest on our podcast? And Jasmine, I know you've told me a little bit about why you've been so excited to interview this guest and why she's so important in your postpartum journey. But I'd love for you to just share a little bit to our listeners why our next guest is so special and get to introduce her yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Peggy, for kicking us off. This guest, I first read her blog about 5 years ago, and I was 6 weeks postpartum. My husband was in the nursery, sleeping with our baby, doing that nighttime routine, while I was trying to sleep in the other room by myself because some of you know I was dealing with postpartum insomnia at that time. And this one night, he emailed me at like 3 a.m. while he was doing the nighttime feed, and he had been reading up blogs, finding things about postpartum depression and antidepressants, because at that point I was really scared about starting an antidepressant. And I happened to read this email around 4 a.m. because I just couldn't go to sleep. I was, that insomnia. And in the email, he compiled a few links to several blogs about postpartum depression and antidepressants. And at the time, there was this one blog that really stood out to me because of the fact that she was a former nurse and she was the only one that actually looked remotely Asian. So I actually felt very connected to her since, I work in the health field and I'm also Asian American. And that blogger is our guest today, which feels super full circle. I'm getting kind of goosebumps just thinking about it. So I'm very excited to introduce to everyone Sia Clyde, who you may know as the fitness mama behind Diary of a Fit Mommy. She has over 2 million followers on Instagram and many more on other platforms like Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, just to name a few. And so, Sia, thank you so much for being on our show today. You've played such a pivotal role in my journey, more than you may realize. And so it's kind of an understatement to say that representation really matters. And I feel so honored that you're on our podcast, given that you say you don't normally do podcasts. So, yeah.
Well, thank you. Yeah. Thank you guys for having me. And this one stuck out because most podcasts are so, fitness focused. And so this is more on the topic, of the postpartum depression that we're going to talk about that I don't get a lot of requests about. So, I was really happy to take this one.
Oh, thank you. So would you mind giving our listeners a little introduction to who you are and also your cultural background as well?
Sure. Well, my cultural background's kind of like a mixing pot. I have a lot of missing puzzle pieces there. My grandmother, who was my heart and soul of my life, she was from South Korea, and she was full-blood Korean. My mom was half, and then that makes me a quarter. But for some reason, that quarter went a long way. But my mom and my grandma made it to the United States, and of course, I was born in the United States. But they're both from Korea. I've never been. I would love to eventually go someday. But that's pretty much the gist of it. My dad was a white guy in the Air Force. So my mom was half Caucasian, half Korean. So that's kind of a little bit of my background. I am a personal trainer. I have 2 kids, and I have one on the way currently. I am married to a wonderful man who is actually getting medically discharged from the Air Force here pretty soon. So he's going to have some free time to go back to school, pursue his own career, and maybe even help me with mine. So we're excited about those possibilities. And my background was I went to nursing school, as you know, and I worked in nursing for about 3 years or so, but I I thought it was what I wanted to do. I first aspired to be a nurse whenever my grandma had cancer, and I loved the way that they, the nurses like took care of her. And so I aspired to provide that level of care. But I felt really burnt out. I felt like it was, I guess, like a career path that wasn't for me. So I chose, to be a stay at home mom with my former husband, who I'm not, obviously married to anymore. I'm remarried. And he allowed me to be a stay at home mom, and I was pregnant with my first son, Grayson. And during that time, I started this tiny little bitty, like, .blogspot.com. It didn't even have its own domain, okay? Blog called Diary of a Fit Mommy. And it was kind of just like an online diary for myself to keep myself motivated because I had just lost a bunch of weight that I'd gained throughout nursing school. I had unhealthy eating habits. And so it was kind of my way of just keeping myself in track. I'd post my prenatal workouts, I'd post my prenatal recipes because, yeah, I did have this fear of, having an unhealthy pregnancy and gaining all that weight back. So, and at the time, I noticed there weren't a lot of blogs like mine. There weren't a lot of information for pregnant ladies. And to be honest, let's face it, there still isn't. There's a lot more now than there was 10 years ago when I was pregnant, or almost 11 years ago. But that was the background. My blog gained readership as free and little and not insignificant as I thought it was. Pinterest was huge when it first started. It was a lot better back then. I'm not really happy about the Pinterest changes these days. I'm not going to go into that. But it was really good for bloggers. You take a really good high quality photo before everything turned into video, and it sent a lot of readership my way. And then a lot of women were like, hey, I'm pregnant. Can you help me? Can you give me workouts? Hey, I'm trying to lose a baby weight. What do you suggest? And I was in no position to help these ladies yet. I'm just sharing my own personal journey. So I was like, oh my gosh, light bulb went off, in my head. I had to get certified. So I went through NASM, got my certification, and then I finally was able to create plans for these women to help them out. And that's kind of what led me to where I am today. I didn't aspire to be an influencer. The term used to actually bother me so much. I used to be like, I'm not an influencer, I'm a personal trainer. But it's been wonderful. Like I said, I started off as a blogger, and from time to time I would review free products, like just to get free product. I remember with my son, I got so many like just free baby product, and I was like, oh, that's so cool. Like free stuff was just rad, right? Still is. But and then it turned into obviously me developing my workout guides, me developing my app almost 3 years ago. Doing brand deals for payment, per post. Like it's opened so many doors, and that's just kind of like where I'm at now, just running my own business, doing my own thing, and really happy I took that leap out of nursing and became my own boss. You can't get better than this.
I feel like so much of motherhood changes people's career trajectories in ways they don't ever think would happen. And it's not necessarily that like your identity became being the fit mommy, but it like changes you in those ways where you like are better understanding your body, better understanding what it means to be where you are. And obviously, even though you're like, oh, I didn't know my blog would have impact, but it clearly had a huge impact on Jasmine in like the height of her postpartum depression. And it was your postpartum depression story. So can you kind of share with our listeners just how you experienced postpartum depression the first time with your son and what led you to get help?
Yeah, sure. So having my first child, I didn't really think of, obviously I didn't prep myself mentally for what if my depression worsens. I had depression before that because I didn't have the best childhood. I went through a lot of trauma there, was still trying to work through that. But I've also heard that when you do suffer from depression before pregnancy, you're most likely going to have postpartum depression. It's just part of it. But also, there's a science that goes into it with your hormones being off balance like so quickly. Whenever you push the baby out, everything shifts, right? But I remember my baby son, he was, golly, I think it was around 2 or 3 months, probably around the 3 month mark, where I would just cry daily for no reason. And I was just like, what in the world? Because we went from just like, I would, I'd have my morning cup of coffee and I would just be staring at him, thanking God like for this just miracle. And then I went from just, like I said, just crying, just sad for no reason, wondering what's going on. My hair's falling out and all those other wonderful postpartum things that happened, but my mood was just off. Like I felt unappreciative, and I just felt like I didn't recognize myself. And I had gotten off my antidepressants before um, getting pregnant with my son because I didn't want, obviously, a first time mom, I didn't want anything to happen to him because of the medication. But I didn't think to get back on it after I had him. I just was so busy with the fact that I was finally a mom and I had a new baby. But no, it was about 3 months in that I felt disconnect, really. I felt at my wits' end and I felt really sad. And there was no reason to be. And that's what triggered me to talk to my then husband about this and to see what could be done because I'm a problem solver. I don't like to let problems fester because I know they get worse. Unfortunately, a lot of women out there, they don't realize what they're going through. I kind of realized something wasn't right. And so that's when I was able to get help and to get back on the medication that I needed.
Yeah. And I think a lot of moms often feel nervous to try antidepressants. It was really important for me to actually read this blog post you had where you expressed such confidence in going to try the antidepressants. And the blog post I read actually was one you wrote after your daughter was born. So
Mm-hmm.
um, you mentioned, like, being ready to jump back on. And it's so interesting as a pharmacist, like I didn't know why deep down I didn't really believe that antidepressants would work or truly help. And then, like, growing up in an Asian household, I also thought like therapy wouldn't help me either. So I had
Yeah.
been prescribed Zoloft at the time when I was reading your blog post, but it was very like on the fence, like, oh, like, I don't know, is this really going to help
Mm.
me? I needed to be better yesterday. I know this is going to take so long to work. Like, what is this really going to do for me? And I was really scared to start. So when I read your blog post that one night at 4 a.m., you made the medication seem less scary and just kind of gave me some hope that it would work,
Mm-hmm.
because this was already your second time, and you're like, yeah, and I'm okay with going back on it.
Right.
And we might have listeners out there who are also hesitant to try medication. So can you share a little bit about what your thought process was for, like, why you were ready to start the antidepressant?
I believe, let's see, the second time around when I was pregnant with my daughter, I went into it with the same mindset as baby number one, my son. I was like, okay, I'm doing good. I'm just going to get off. And, I don't want the medication to affect. I guess my mind, the earliest weeks of pregnancy are the most critical when everything's forming, the brain, the neural tube, everything. And I just wanted to get through, I guess, the crucial weeks, but I think it was 11 weeks when I got on Zoloft with her, when I was pregnant with her. And, which was kind of scary because with my son, I didn't take antidepressants when I was pregnant. I waited until I was 3 months postpartum and feeling, just wonky. So, but I knew what I was feeling. I was feeling strange. And it was similar to what I was feeling 3 months postpartum with my son. And, being pregnant can just make you feel like a completely different person. And I'm not really sure why I felt like I needed to get back on, but it was just something in me that just felt different. And I recognized it. And I was just like, okay, I'm going to talk to my OB about it. And I did. And then, so 11 weeks, pregnant, I got back on the medication with her. But, medication doesn't solve everything because even after I had her, I did go through postpartum depression again. But at least I knew what it was. And at that time, let's see, I started seeing my therapist whenever she was 5 months old. So I had more support going on there. But, unfortunately, I think that the other part of it, there are women who are scared to start medication. And then there's women who think that it's just going to magically make them happy. And it doesn't work that way. In my experience, yes, it does increase serotonin, but it also, and Zoloft, especially for whatever reason, I feel in my own personal experience with it, it does kind of zombify you a little bit. And I don't mean that in a bad way. It just takes away those extreme feelings, like whether it's mood swings or anger or anxiety. It's almost like it does mellow you out. And, I did eventually switch off of Zoloft to something else where I could feel more emotion. And, before I got pregnant this time around, I was on Prozac and I really loved it. So, but my IVF doctor, did not recommend Prozac. She recommended Zoloft as a safer and more, I guess, universally studied option for pregnancy. So
Mhm.
I think they're all class C drugs or whatnot. But, obviously when the benefits, like every doctor has ever told me in regards to this, if the benefits outweigh the risks, then you should do it. And they always have,
Mhm.
no matter what. So,
Yeah. I think nowadays they've actually taken away ratings for pregnancy
mm-hmm.
classes for medicines. They took away that a few years back, and it's more just because like it can seeing that rating doesn't like
Yeah.
seeing like A B C D like doesn't actually like tell you the order of like which is safest or not. It's just telling you the types of studies that have been done. So it was a little bit
Okay.
misleading. And nowadays they sort of go off of just like recommendations of what's better for like during pregnancy, during breastfeeding, during
Sure.
lactation, like all those sorts, or like if you're in a conceiving stage. I think those are the three categories that now they sort of try to give evidence about. But you're right,
Okay.
like most antidepressants that are SSRIs, that the classes you're talking about, are all very well studied. Very like actually of all medications, they are the most well studied in breastfeeding and
Right.
pregnancy of any medications. So yeah, there's lots of good reason to believe that they are fine during pregnancy for certain
Mm-hmm.
things, and you're working obviously closely with somebody on this, which who's going to determine what's best for you.
And having my daughter, she's or excuse me, I had the Zoloft, in my system for most of the pregnancy. She turned out just fine. So I
Mm-hmm.
just want to add that, I did make a post on Instagram, I think like a couple weeks ago, where I was holding my little pill, my little Zoloft, and talking about it because, it's just something I just don't talk about very much anymore. That I am on antidepressants again this time around. And I
Mm-hmm.
had a comment, obviously just from people who don't know any better saying, well, are you afraid of, it's going to affect their development? I'm like, well, I had my daughter and she's just fine. If
You're like,
anything, she
she's
slept
born,
really
she's here,
good.
she's fine.
I don't know.
She just turned 8,
Exactly.
right? And
Yeah.
she looks like
Yes.
great, thriving, beautiful little girl. And
Yeah, so she's fine. She was a Zoloft baby, if you want to call it that, and she's doing just fine. So,
And to our listeners, if there's more like, questions they have, we did have a really great episode with Dr. Nia last season, going through in depth all these questions about these medications. Because I know that there can be a lot of like, well, what about this and what about that? And so definitely, if you want more information, highly recommend checking out that episode from last season
yeah,
as well.
episode 17 with
Oh my
our
gosh, you
perinatal
memorized that episode.
psychiatrist. I just saw it the other day, so
Oh,
yeah,
good.
yeah. I have to agree though on that Zoloft comment you're making about the feelings, as I also felt the same way, that it did sort of dull the feelings a little, but at the same time I think I needed that to be able to work
mhm.
through the therapy, and I didn't even actually realize it until I got off of it.
What if you thought, what if it wasn't dulling? What if it wasn't zombifying? What if it was bringing you down to a level of normalcy? And we're just so
Maybe.
used to the chaos and the chaotic
Mm-hmm.
feelings.
Yeah,
That's
that's a
another
good
way of
way of
looking at it.
I like that way
Yeah.
of thinking about it. Yeah.
We're just
Yeah.
not used to what's normal because our moods are like here and then back up, So maybe it just brings us to this stability that we aren't used to. So
Mm-hmm.
it's another good way of looking at that.
I like that reframe.
Mm-hmm. I think, Jasmine, speaking of therapy, you said that it kind of helped you get to a space where you could do the therapy. I think I recall reading in your blog, Sia, and then you kind of clarified for us later on that there was like, oh, therapy, no, not my cup of tea, but it's great. It works for other people. I'd be curious when you wrote that, because I know that you said that, you did end up seeing therapy. Like, how was that for you?
I can't remember if I wrote that blog after I had my daughter Everly or during my
I think it was
pregnancy.
after
I think so. Okay.
few months
So
after her. Yeah.
it took me a while to really appreciate therapy. And it's really funny because, when I was sent the interview questions, I saw that and now I'm like, yeah, I'm so gung ho and I love therapy. Therapy rocks. And I'm like, wow, I read the blog. I had to go back and read it because it's been like 8 years since I've written it. And I was just like, oh, okay. I guess in that moment I felt kind of like it was, I guess, a little cliche, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, I started therapy. I believe she was 5 months old because I remember bringing her car seat into the first session and she would sleep, throughout the whole thing. I think it was just kind of like a little redundant, and until the real work started happening, it was just me talking about my whole life story, and it was draining in the beginning. but I've seen the same therapist now for 8 years. I still see her today.
Wow.
And she has helped me through, that, and through divorce, has helped, through issues that I'm still facing from my divorce. And she, has helped me with my relationship with my now husband, and, issues with parenting. So I can't imagine not having therapy now. So I think that my faith and my trust in therapy has only built over the years. And I think that sometimes it takes years to appreciate and have a healthy relationship with therapy, because I mean, I don't know anyone who just goes into their first session and they might say, yeah, it was great, I loved it, but you don't make profound changes overnight. For me, it took years to really appreciate it. And I got my husband before we got married. He got into therapy. We do couples therapy, so he has his own therapist, I have my own therapist, and then we have a couples therapist who's completely different. We love therapy. We're a family of therapy, so definitely gung-ho about it. So whenever I went back and read that, I was like, oh wow, I guess in the beginning I just wasn't getting much out of it, but it did take some time, and I'm really glad that I stuck with it. And that's just another reminder, if you feel like it's not going anywhere, just give it some time. Be open-minded. Sometimes we stand in our own way, or find someone else who can better meet your needs when it comes to working things out in that way in counseling.
Yeah. I mean, even for my postpartum, I ended up seeing maybe a few, because the first one didn't work out because then the pandemic hit. And then the second one, at some point, I realized it wasn't culturally congruent. And so I love that you normalize either you stick it out and see, or maybe it's just not a good fit. And it doesn't have to be that first session is going to be the aha moment. Just like medications, you don't just take the pill and it works right away. And the same thing for therapy. I think especially in these situations, Jasmine, you said too, I needed to get better yesterday. And it's so hard because healing does take time, and it does, take some investment on the side of the person receiving the therapy and receiving the medication, right? You have to keep taking it. It takes a couple of weeks, and same thing with therapy. And I love that you did and eventually be like, what are you talking about? I love therapy.
Right. That's really funny. Yeah. At first I thought it was a typo, and you sent me the link or whatever. I went back and read it, and I was like, sure enough, I did say that. And I'm like, whoa, I'm different now than I was 8 years ago. So,
and again, I think it takes that time to also find the right person, right? Because if you had never meshed well with anyone, you would have been like, well, this is a waste of my time. And the first person I ever saw tried to ask me about my childhood, and I was like, are you kidding me right now? I'm trying to find ways to go back to sleep. I'm depressed. This is new motherhood. It's driving me bonkers. And you're trying to ask me about my childhood right now? And I didn't understand why the whole picture was so important also to bringing all the pieces together. Sometimes it, like you said, takes so many sessions to get to kind of the root of the cause. And
the breakthrough.
I didn't realize until I became a mom that all these childhood things do sort of compound and add in, and we have to resolve some of those things. It sounds like you guys are doing great. You guys are addressing everything from every angle. It's fantastic.
It's been a long road. My life has not been easy. I haven't always made the best decisions either, but life is really good now. So I'm really glad that I stuck through everything.
I mean, does anyone's life does anyone ever make the right decisions the first time every time? No.
But when you're in in front of thousands of people or so, they tend to hold you to a different, I guess, standard than themselves, a little higher.
It's really hard.
It's very hard.
Yeah, so you're always being judged, which kind of sucks because you're just a human at the end of the day. Yeah.
Right, but I'm used to it. I just posted a reel yesterday of me and my husband eating burgers, and it was something you told your kids that you went to grocery shop or do something, or they're at school or something, and then you sneak out and you enjoy a meal together. So it's $40 instead of $100, and someone was like, your hair looks like a rat's nest. Just no reason. And I was like, I said this, I straight up said this, I just left the water park you did. SHIT. So, I was kind of like, wow. But no, most things do roll off my back, but there's just going to be people out there, and it's getting worse. I don't know what it is with the new generations, or just, I don't know.
It's
But
different when you can hide behind a screen.
it is
Yeah.
different. But oh my
And it's
God.
so interesting being a mother in this era where you're putting so much out there. Like our
Mm,
moms weren't posting things on Instagram or whatever,
this
and so
is
now you
true.
have the pressure of motherhood with all those eyes looking, whether or not you're an influencer, because even just friends that follow will have opinions and comments, and you're
Mhm.
just like, oh my gosh. Why does everyone
Mm,
have to have a say? And then people be like, when then why do you post? It's like to share, to make impact on people like Jasmine who
right.
found your blog, right? It's such a push
Yeah.
and pull in this day and age with social media and
But
motherhood.
you know, the block button has been so therapeutic. And also that little hide comment button, that's amazing. So then they won't come at you from other accounts and why'd you block me? You know, they won't know they're hidden because only them, you know, they can see their comments. So when you hide,
Also, why are
I
people
love
so
the hide
committed
button.
to keep attacking you? It's like,
I
geez,
don't
go do
know.
something else. Go
I
touch
don't
some grass, you
know.
know?
Right. Touch the grass.
I mean, I imagine also like sharing about your postpartum depression publicly was kind of scary because
Mm-hmm.
even back then when you first wrote about it, I'm sure there was even less people talking about it. So
Yeah.
how was it received when you published these different pieces about your son and your daughter and the postpartum depression?
So the postpartum depression itself was widely received as positive.
Mhm.
However, it was when I got a little more specific about some of my postpartum depression, or actually prenatal depression, whenever I wrote my blog post of my gender disappointment, because I had a huge post that went viral on, you know, during my second pregnancy because I found out I was having a girl and I cried for months. I was unhappy. I saw how perfect my son was and I wanted another. I wanted a clone of my son. And I think that another thing that went into my fear was my own broken mother daughter relationship because, you know, I had such a broken relationship with my mother. I still don't have contact with her today by choice. And, you know, I just feared having a little girl. And God, now she's like the best thing in the world. Like, I want more. But, you know, I had so many people just saying, wow, you should just be grateful you can have children and how terrible you are selfish. And it's like, whoa, hold on, pump the brakes. Like, okay, this is my experience. No need to take away, you know, but it's just, yes, every just to get pregnant is a blessing, but I think that gender disappointment is a real thing and it's not talked about enough because women are shamed into feeling like they're wrong for being unhappy about the gender. Like, but you know what? I had a lot of positive emails come in. They're like, "Thank you for being honest. You know, I just had my, you know, XYZ girl, boy, whatever. I wanted this and I didn't have it. I'm so sad. I'm so glad I'm not alone." You know, so it was really nice to have that. And but now, I mean, obviously, we did IVF, so we know what we're having. We get to pick. But not everyone has that ability. But you know, I was very upset. Obviously, now that I'm older, I have one of each. I don't care. But
Yeah.
you know, we do eventually. You know, I'm having a boy now. I want one more child, and we do have a little girl embryo, and we want to use her so we can kind of balance the family. And genetic testing is a blessing.
Mm-hmm.
So, but no, that was probably one of the strongest pieces that I've ever written on the whole prenatal or postpartum depression when it came to that. It wasn't until she was placed in my arms that I just loved her, but like it still took some time bonding with her. It's not. It's like it didn't fully go away, the gender disappointment or whatever. Um, but over time, I mean, it's like it never even happened. I was never disappointed. So
Yeah. I don't think people realize how much our own relationships with our mothers or whatever can play a role into that kind of gender disappointment, whether it was positive or
mm,
negative. I think you've talked a lot about just even your own mom in that relationship, and you mentioned you're not in contact with her anymore, but as you know, she picked on your weight. There's a lot of body image trauma from your relationship with your mom. And
mm.
how do you feel like those issues played a role too? Like you mentioned, there's that, okay, what is my relationship with my daughter going to be like? But just it brought up a lot for your postpartum depression. And then how do you think like physical fitness and recovery and postpartum tie into your maternal mental health?
So it affects me obviously my whole life. Whenever I mentioned earlier that I lost weight after gaining so much weight in nursing school, I was barely eating. Like I would count several like almonds as a meal, like maybe a thing of yogurt. And I think that the underlying pressure there was from her. You know, she would always pick on my thighs. She would always point out when my thighs had blown up quote unquote, that I was eating like a pig and just stuff like that. Like if it looked like I'd gained weight as a teenager, y'all, she would point this stuff out, and it made me hate myself. And particularly, I hated my thighs. I hate my cellulite. I hated just where I gained weight. I guess my lower half is where I gained weight. And so I worked so hard to get down to this weight where I had no dimples. And honestly, I was down, I think, at 106, which was way too thin. I was skin and bones. This was like 2010. And, I came to terms whenever I had my first child, he made me love my body more. I know, like, you would have thought that it would have made me have more of a complex. And during my first pregnancy, it did. Like, all those years of taunting did give me uh, kind of a worry, I guess, about the weight gain. But, when he was born, it was like, it was almost healing to see my body change. It was scary. I was anxious about it. But it was almost healing to see what my body could do, and the fact, that was so powerful. And it kind of erased some of that anxiety over, oh, wow, what if I hate my body afterwards? But, I did take good care of myself, though. I only gained 30 pounds with both my pregnancies, and I did work hard to be healthy. But no, I mean, even with this pregnancy, it's been like 8, almost 9 years since I've been pregnant. And I'm looking at my body, and I'm just like, oh man, and the IVF medication fluffs you up. And I told my husband and my son, we were sitting by the pool yesterday, and he was like, look at those dimples in my thighs. And I laugh and I joke about it. I'm going to have cellulite. It's just, I'm genetically prone to it. What's crazy is that my mom had it while she was poking on my weight. She was not like in her best shape either, but that's projection. But I think that I've come such a far way from that, that it doesn't really bother me as much anymore. So, but still, I think that the scar will always be there. But I always make it a point to compliment my daughter, not really on her looks, but you're so smart, you're such a good friend, you're so kind, you're so funny. Like, I built her up, whereas I was torn down. And it makes me feel better. It's very healing to do that.
I was just going to say that I feel like a lot of Asian upbringing, and you mentioned your mom's like half Korean, is they have no filter when it comes to talking about your appearances, your weight, like anything. It could be that you look like, wow, your face looks big. I used to get that a lot from my aunts.
How do you fix that?
I know. And then it would be the other way around too. It's like, oh, you need to eat more because they're always trying to feed you.
My grandma was like that.
Right? It's like what? I can't win here. Like, what do you want me to do?
Am I too big? Am I too small? What do you want?
Yeah, my grandma would say, you look like you're skin and bones, when my mom was calling me fat. So I'm just like, okay. Which, I preferred the skin and bones comment. Cool, I'm skinny. Not like I'm a fat whale, is what I was hearing on the other end of the spectrum. So yeah, definitely probably an Asian culture thing. But my mom, I feel like she does have some undiagnosed or diagnosed, and I just don't know about the mental health disorders that prevented her from doing her best. So yeah, definitely an Asian culture thing, I think.
Yeah, and you also mentioned that this third pregnancy is through IVF, which we actually know can be a risk factor for postpartum depression. And obviously you're taking precautions, and you started an antidepressant during pregnancy already. How do you feel that your mental well-being is right now during this current pregnancy, and how has taking your antidepressants so far been?
I feel like it's pretty good. I was on Prozac, as I mentioned earlier, before I got pregnant via IVF. And honestly, I went a little bit without being on an antidepressant because I don't I just had that same fear. Like, I don't want to conceive and have all those, critical development, be affected by, because I read these studies that even Zoloft could cause like heart defects. And I'm like, oh my God. So around the same, week that I got on Zoloft with Everly, I got on Zoloft with this one. And, my OB, he said, it's fine, it's safe, cool. I just had a moment where I was feeling really anxious, and which, I'm going through a lot right now. But I decided to just get back on, and here I am. So I am 20 weeks, and it's great. I feel wonderful. I do feel, kind of zombified a little bit. Like, I love that word. I don't know. It's just like, I don't mean in a bad way. It's just, it's really mellowed me. and I don't have any plans to get off of it. Obviously, I think that yeah, it'll be definitely something that I stay on it for a while, and then eventually, when I'm not breastfeeding, I'll probably go back to Prozac because that was my favorite. But as far as postpartum depression being increased in IVF patients, I can see that. However, my my I guess my point of view is a little different because I was fertile. My husband was the one who's infertile, and he was the one who, he's the reason why we did have to do IVF. So I knew there was a good chance of me getting pregnant, especially with male factor infertility. The rates are higher. But obviously, there is the stress of all these shots that were just so painful, and all the medications that it take, and all the appointments we had to travel for, and of course, just the procedure itself. And we did the egg retrieval, or I did the egg retrieval, and he did the sperm retrieval on his part, and it was a lot, and it was very fast paced. This all happened like within 6 months.
Wow.
So yeah, like I think that it'll be already, or already, sorry. I think it'll be all right whenever I give birth. I don't really see IVF in my personal case, like making my PPD any worse. I think that, I'm just going to have to deal with the normal hormonal fluctuation and shift after I give birth. But like I said, I'm not planning on getting off the Zoloft. I think I might have with my daughter. I can't remember if I got off the Zoloft after I gave birth. So I think I'm just going to stay on it the whole time. The baby's already used to it. And, I just don't want to risk feeling bad. And when that dip comes, I want to be prepared. And obviously, therapy is going to keep going. I don't plan on stopping therapy anytime soon. And something new that I'm actually doing that used to gross me out is placenta encapsulation. But no, I'm using Mommy Made, and I'm going to have my placenta encapsulated. So I'm really excited about that. So I'm really prepared. I have a really good support system and a plan in place to make sure I stay happy and healthy after my third pregnancy.
It really sounds like you are valuing your mental health and taking the steps that you need to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think what I'm hearing too is there's a lot of preventative measures. That is probably why all these things that traditionally are risk factors for postpartum depression are being dealt with early on. And that's ideally what we want to do when you think about like the postpartum or the perinatal support team. What do you want to do is get in there early, support the mom prenatally. And when you mentioned, like, I don't know, I mean, IVF is tough, but I feel it's because you've been doing the therapy, you've been doing the work, you've been taking the medication and being preventive. Because I think that's a thing too, is some of it can be mitigated by early intervention. And a lot of times people aren't seeking help until after they've given birth, after they've like 3 months in, where it peaks for postpartum depression. And this is your third rodeo, right? Like,
yes, I think it's because I know better, honestly.
Yeah.
I think that most women who don't get help immediately or on time, or even those sad cases where women went without help and they did something awful and, they didn't get help in time. It was maybe their first time, but I don't know. Like, I think that I just know. And I know how I am when I'm not on antidepressants. I know how I am after I give birth. So I'm just going to guard myself and make sure I'm good because, the mother, she's the heart of the family, and, my kids and my husband need a healthy mom and a wife. Like, I can't afford to be unhealthy mentally or physically, they need me. So I'm doing everything that I can to stay in check. So
yeah, let's frame that. That's a good quote. Yeah. And, about 2 years ago, I saw a reel that you made in collaboration with PSI for Giving Tuesday. And I think that's actually what suddenly jogged my memory about your blog post. So I did some volunteer work with PSI, and it just felt like a sign of alignment to see like, oh, wow, like you were also working with PSI to promote mental health. And so I went back and I dug up your blog post and I read it again. And you actually had mentioned PSI in that blog post. I think I was just in too much of a haze, really, to
the
like
haze
absorb,
is real,
right? And so I'm wondering, is there other work you've been doing to spread awareness right now, or if there's any advice you'd give to mom about signs to look out for, when to seek help?
I'm not currently doing any work. I feel like I'm in a really good space. And, when I wrote my blogs, it was as I was going through what I was going through. Obviously, I don't know what I'm going to go through this third time around. I haven't been there yet. But just signs to look out for when it comes to PPD and what to watch for is just disconnection from your spouse or your partner, disconnect from your children that are, are pre-existing, your, newborn, you're neglecting your self-care. Like, mama needs a shower too,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, just neglecting oneself and just crying. I think that a lot of women that I hear, they cry. They just cry for no reason. I think that's just sadness that is overwhelming, and it's not just baby blues. It doesn't, it's not easily shifted by someone getting you a bouquet of flowers or, getting you a 12 count of donuts. It's not really that simple to fix. It's a little deeper than that. I think that for those who are really experienced and seasoned with PPD, then that type of thing, just knowing what to look out for internally, which is kind of like a broad statement, though. I feel like that's not very helpful. Maybe to moms who have dealt with it a few times, that is helpful. But just feeling off. I think that talking to a therapist can help you find those signs. They know the questions to ask because sometimes we don't know the questions to ask ourselves. And I wish I would have had a therapist like the day my daughter was born and not 5 months later. So I think that seeking therapy throughout one's pregnancy is great because your life completely changes. So,
Yeah. I think we often say it'd be nice if you actually had the therapist during your pregnancy so you
yeah.
already have something set up for postpartum if you had to reach
Mhm.
out. They already know you. You don't have to start
Mm-hmm.
from ground zero. Um, and I guess to wrap us up, since we're talking about healing and healing ourselves, and we're asking all of our guests this season, what is something that you would go back and tell yourself when you were going through postpartum depression the first or the second time?
Oh man, I feel like my answer is going to be awfully cliche, but I think that you've probably heard this a million times, but to know that you're not alone. I think
Mhm.
that, obviously not everyone's going to write a blog post that everyone's going to see, but even if it's just opening up to your best friend or your neighbor or even a mom group on Facebook, you can help someone. You can help a fellow mom, a new mom going through postpartum, mom who just needs a little bit of inspiration or encouragement. Just be open and help others to realize that's normal while also reminding yourself that's normal. But I
Mhm.
think that I don't know. I feel like a lot of moms are ashamed to get help. Like we just are so guilty for not enjoying our new baby or for crying when we should be crying tears of happiness. We're crying tears of sadness for no reason at all. And to tell someone that we're fearing being judged or unappreciative or just, I guess, reprimanded for it. So I just being open, which is, I know, like I said, it sounds very cliche, but just being more open with the people around you and realizing that you're not alone. Because what if your friend's like, oh, yeah, me too. I went through that. Really? And then boom, 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 you automatically feel better and you have some support there. I feel like a lot of new moms with postpartums, they do have support. They just don't know how to utilize it.
Yes.
So, or they don't feel like it.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
you don't feel like doing much when you have postpartum, or you don't know how. You feel overwhelmed, like you said, in the days or in a fog. So,
Mhm.
you just have to really fight it.
And that's what depression does to you. It makes you feel like you're alone. It makes you feel like you're the only one going through it. And I
Mm-hmm.
love that advice you're giving your past self because that's why this podcast exists to share these stories so that people know that they're not alone when they see, a
Yeah.
fit mommy living her life eating burgers. It's like, you know what? Life isn't perfect. And I think the more we
It's
can
true.
normalize that we're not the highlight reel that we see online, the more when
Right.
someone's going through it, they're going to be like, oh, this isn't my fault. I'm not alone. Like, this is normal, but I also need help, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so glad that I know you thought that that was very cliche, but it is such an important message for moms going through it to hear.
I
Mm-hmm.
don't think you can hear that enough,
Mm-hmm.
honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And especially if you're actually in the depths of it, to kind of be like, wow, like even somebody that looks as successful and like as great of a life that you have has also survived through something like this. Like, I think that can be helpful to some people to know that, like, yeah, not everything is how it looks, and it's okay, and I'm not the one failing here, and it's normal, and I can get through this, right?
And it might take years, but you can get through it.
Mm-hmm.
So it takes time.
Thank you so much. And where can people find you? I know it's pretty apparent, but if for some reason you don't know about Sia yet, where should people find you?
Well, my biggest platform is Instagram, and I'm at Diary of a Fit Mommy Official. But I also have a website, www.diaryoffitmommy.com. So those are my two mains. Probably I do have TikTok and stuff like that, but I like to promote my Instagram because that's my biggest account. It's where I'm most active, post my stories, what I'm doing on the daily, and my pregnancy updates. So
great. We will definitely link those in our show notes.
awesome.
And wishing you congratulations and good luck and wellness on your third journey. We'll be following along to see how that goes. Very excited for you and happy for you. Yeah. Thank you so much for just being open and honest. And again, like that one night, just sort of reading your blog post, really, like I said, it was important for me to see somebody that had Asian features that I could be like, wow, okay, this isn't just a white person problem.
You know? No, it's not.
It doesn't discriminate, right?
It doesn't. So,
yeah, I again really thank you, and this has been really meaningful to me. So
absolutely, thank you both.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Healing the Tigress. The more we share these stories, the more we can help other AAPI mothers and partners. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to keep supporting this mission, please hit the subscribe button to the show and take a few seconds to leave a rating. An extra big thanks if you would also leave a review to boost our show visibility and help other AAPI folks find us.
You can also follow us on Instagram at Healing the Tigress, or even better, check out our Patreon at patreon.com/healingthetigress-podcast to support us more. Inside the Patreon, we will be offering more bonus episodes, sneak peeks, and a community for you to help shape our podcast too. Thanks for being here.
Healing the Tigress is produced and edited by Peggy and Jasmine.
Music for this show is remixed by Dr. Tony Huynh of Tony Mixes.
Our intro music is a cover of You and Me by Z Avi, played by our co-host Peggy.
Our outro music is a cover of Green Island Serenade, played by Jasmine's sister.
Cover art design is by Dr. Angela Chung.